So yesterday, I came on here and I said that the Pittsburgh Steelers were not going to do anything for a while in the remainder of the offseason. I was totally convinced that their roster was almost filled out, and even if one or two slackers got added to their 90-man, it wasn't going to be anything flashy. 12 hours later, I was proven wrong almost 3 times because this team sometimes, well, they're unpredictable, and sometimes I think they're just out to get me. Either way, great moves by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we got to talk about them. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/allsteelerstalk and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Today, we're talking about the moves of Kwon Alexander, who is expected to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers after a visit, and the addition or re-addition of Mason Rudolph as the QB3. Let's start there. Let's start with the quarterback. A lot of people are very happy about this, and then there are a lot of people who aren't happy about this at all, who believe Mason Rudolph is not the answer to have a veteran as your QB3, which in my opinion doesn't make any sense. The Pittsburgh Steelers have taken every caution necessary for Kenny Pickett. They have done everything in their power that they possibly can to make his transition from year one into year two as seamless as possible. They kept their backup quarterback on a ridiculous contract just to make sure that he had a veteran presence who he knew how to work with. They kept their offensive coordinator, which I don't believe anybody has any faith in, including the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point, just to make sure that Kenny didn't have to learn a whole new offense in year two, and instead they'll give him a buffer year. They went out and redid their entire offensive line almost. They boosted their wide receiver core. They're looking to add another running back, and they went out and they got a 6'7" tight end who could both block and pass catch, and then also added Allen Robinson, who's a red zone gift from God, for lack of a better way to put it. They did everything possible to make sure that Kenny Pickett's move into year two was as easy as it could possibly get. And you're telling me that the addition of Mason Rudolph isn't a good one for a quarterback that you are being this cautious with? Because in my opinion, it's as good as it gets. I didn't think Mason Rudolph was going to come back. I didn't think he wanted anything to do with the Pittsburgh Steelers, nor did I think he should want anything to do with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think they necessarily treated him the best over the last 5 years. He's dealt with some very, very angry fans who do not like him, and that's got to be tough. On top of that, you've lost your job not once, but twice in the course of those 5 years. And at one point, you got pushed to a third stringer, and that seemingly is where you'll sit this season. I just didn't see Mason Rudolph wanting to return to that situation for another season. But free agency has come and it's gone and it's quieted down, and the NFL draft has passed, and Mason Rudolph's sitting there and he's got to be thinking, nobody's calling. I'm not getting any offers, at least none that are worthy of me to go there. So I might as well head back to Pittsburgh and at least get a paycheck and at least play some football, even if I'm not suiting up on Sundays. He comes back to Pittsburgh, and I think it's a great move for the Steelers. They now have 2 veteran quarterbacks behind Kenny Pickett, both with starting experience, both with winning starting experience, who at times have flashed very good things, who both have great chemistry with their starter, who's very young and developing, and also have chemistry with some of these wide receivers, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, and most of the offensive line. Mason Rudolph comes in here, and if need be, if worst case scenario, he has to go onto a football field, you feel a lot better about that situation than you do Bryce Perkins, Tanner Morgan, or Hunter Johnson. Easy. Now, obviously, the money comes into play, and you have to wonder how much he's going to sign for because you're already paying your backup quarterback a boatload of money. But if Mason Rudolph is here for the cheap, which I would imagine he is, it's hard to say that this move isn't a positive one. I think it just directly impacts everything that the Steelers are doing in a very, very positive light. It uplifts Kenny Pickett, and it gives him another face to learn from in year two that he relied on in year one. The perfect move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought Mason would have went elsewhere, but his return, even if it is surprising, is definitely a good one for the Steelers, for Kenny Pickett, and probably for himself if he's still got a job in the NFL. The second one is Kwon Alexander, an inside linebacker who's expected to sign after a visit with the Steelers a guy who's very versatile. He's got 8 career interceptions, 33 career pass deflections, and I name his coverage stats because that's what he's known to be, as a coverage inside linebacker, which is exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers have been looking for. They've searched high and low for an answer for a pass coverage capable inside linebacker and have been unable to find one. Now they hit late in free agency, a guy who's dealt with injuries and who has missed some time. He's bounced around to 3 teams in 4 years. It hasn't been the easiest road for Quan Alexander as of late, and that's definitely concerning. If I have any qualms, if I have any, I guess concerns would be the word about Quan Alexander, it's that he has bounced around so much as of late, and it's hard to adjust that many times to new teams and stay productive. Hopefully in Pittsburgh, it's a, hey, get to know this defense, really work with it. Don't put too much pressure on yourself and just be yourself out there, able to cover tight ends, cover slot receivers, maybe a running back here or there, and then just fill a gap a couple of times a game. I think Quan Alexander comes in here with the possibility to start and probably some expectations that he will start over a Landon Roberts, but I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to chalk him in to any depth chart position right away. I think they're going to let him, Roberts, Mark Robinson all compete to see what the depth chart shakes out. Cole Holcomb, in my eyes, is the feature linebacker. He's the guy that they want to be here for a while. That's why they signed him to a 3-year deal. I just look at him as a young field general who has a lot of upside when he's healthy. And if he could stay healthy this season, much like he did before the foot injury, he's their guy. Quan Alexander comes in here. He's still under the age of 30. He's got that pass coverage ability. He could work well. It's a move for the Pittsburgh Steelers that I think everybody's been waiting a long time for. A move that everybody expected them to make months ago when free agency started, and that's how they should have kicked off their free agency, with the guy who is just a proven pass coverage linebacker in the middle. Instead, they waited and got this guy, I would believe, on the cheap. I would believe that Quan Alexander is going to come to Pittsburgh and just be a guy who's here on little money, on a 1-year deal, to come in here and just see what he's got. And if he's got something, the Steelers will keep him around and say, hey, look, these are our inside linebackers. Cole Holcomb is here for the future. Now let's keep Quan Alexander because he's only 27, 28 years old. And then Mark Robinson's only entering year 2. By that time, it'll be year 3. And that's a very solid core for the Pittsburgh Steelers to build around. In one day, they have done everything that I said they weren't going to do. I'll admit my wrong. I should admit my wrong. I didn't see it coming. I didn't see any of it coming. But I will tell you this. The Steelers got better yesterday. They got a lot better, to the point where at this point in the offseason, I didn't think they could get this much better. I thought that what we had was what we got, and the Steelers were here to coast it out and just figure it out once the time comes. I still think that there's some issues at slot cornerback, some concerning ones, but the signing of XFL player Luke Barku, maybe he changes things. He's only 24 years old, but he also hasn't worked out in the NFL before. Very concerning position for them. As for inside linebacker, I didn't think it was that big of a concern, but I'm sitting here today saying, well, they're a lot better than they were 24 hours ago. As for quarterback, I didn't think a quarterback 3 was going to make that much of a difference. But now I sit here and I say, that's as good as it gets for the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback room. It might be as good as it gets for the inside linebacker room now. And now they just move forward, maybe with a couple more signings to go, because I'm not going to say that there's not any more coming, not after yesterday. And maybe there's another splash. But the ones that they've already made, the decisions that they have on deck, or the decisions that they had on deck that they pulled the trigger on yesterday, man, they got way better in 24 hours. So sorry I was wrong. But at the same time, if I had anything to do with that, everybody's welcome.